The rain drummed steadily against the glass windows, casting wavering shadows across the dimly lit bedroom. I leaned against the headboard, swirling the crimson liquid in my glass, watching as the reflections danced like flickering flames. Across the room, Evelyn stood near the bed, wrapped in nothing but a silk robe, the thin fabric clinging to her curves, teasing me with every subtle movement. She was exquisite, the kind of beauty that made men lose themselves. And tonight, she was playing her favorite game, pushing me to the edge. "What are you thinking about?" I asked, taking a slow sip of my wine, never taking my eyes off her. Evelyn didn't answer immediately. Instead, she let her fingers trail lazily down her throat, over her collarbone, then lower, to the delicate tie of her robe. Her lips curled into a knowing smile. "I just want to make you happy," she murmured, voice smooth as silk. The robe slipped off her shoulders, pooling at her feet, revealing her bare, flawless skin. My breath hitched. She knew exactly what she was doing. She knew how much I craved her. I placed my glass on the nightstand and reached for her, gripping her waist and pulling her onto my lap. Her body was warm, soft, intoxicating. I could feel the rapid beat of her heart against my chest as she straddled me, her fingers tracing slow, torturous patterns across my shoulders. "Do you want me, Noah?" she whispered, her breath hot against my ear. Instead of answering, I crashed my lips against hers, swallowing her moan as my hands roamed her body, exploring, claiming. She arched against me, pressing closer, the friction driving us both insane. Evelyn's fingers tangled in my hair, tugging slightly as she gasped against my mouth. "You're so impatient tonight," she teased, though her own body betrayed her urgency. I growled in response, flipping her onto the mattress, pinning her beneath me. She laughed breathlessly, her eyes dark with desire. And when I lowered my head, trailing kisses down her neck, her laughter melted into a soft, shuddering sigh. The room filled with the sounds of our bodies moving together. Heavy breaths. Whispered please, the intoxicating rhythm of pleasure. She wrapped her legs around me, pulling me deeper, her nails digging into my back as she gasped my name. I wanted to consume her. I wanted to drown in her. And for those moments, nothing else mattered. Until the phone rang. The sudden noise cut through the heated air, piercing the haze of lust between us. I stilled, my breathing ragged, staring at the glowing screen on the nightstand. A name flashed across it. Liam. My body tensed. Evelyn's eyes widened for a split second before she quickly reached for the phone, snatching it up before I could react. She rolled off the bed, clutching the device to her chest, as if shielding it from me. "It's just he probably needs help with his homework," she said, forcing a smile. Something in her voice was off. Too light, too careful. I narrowed my eyes as she slipped out onto the balcony, pressing the phone to her ear. The moment she thought she was out of earshot, her voice dropped to a hushed whisper. I sat up, my skin still burning from the way she had just been beneath me. Yet now, an icy suspicion crept down my spine. What the hell was that about? Evelyn had always been close to Liam, my son from my first marriage. But this was different. There was a tension in her body, a secrecy in her tone that I had never noticed before. I climbed out of bed, pulling on a pair of sweatpants, my mind racing. I had never questioned their relationship before. Liam had always been a bit distant with me, but I assumed it was because of the divorce, because of the years apart. But now, a dark thought slithered into my mind, one that I couldn't shake. Was Evelyn hiding something from me? And if she was, what the hell was it? I walked toward the balcony door, the rain drumming harder now, muffling most of her words. But then, just as I was about to step outside, I caught something. Her voice, strained, desperate. "No, Liam, you can't tell him. Not yet." I froze. My blood turned to ice. What the fuck was going on? The moment the words left Evelyn's mouth, something inside me snapped. "You can't tell him. Not yet." The rain battered against the balcony glass as I stood there, frozen. My mind struggling to process what I had just heard. My wife, my beautiful, sensual, utterly intoxicating wife, was hiding something from me. And somehow Liam was involved. A rush of anger and confusion surged through me, but I forced myself to stay still, to stay quiet. I needed to know more. Evelyn's voice dropped even lower, but the tension in her tone was unmistakable. Please just trust me. I will. But not now. Not yet. I took a slow, measured breath and stepped back, moving away from the door before she could notice me. My pulse hammered against my ribs as I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the floor, my mind racing through every possible explanation. What the hell was she keeping from me? The sound of the balcony door sliding open made me glance up. Evelyn walked in, her expression carefully composed. But I caught the slight tremor in her fingers as she set the phone down. She turned to me with a soft smile. "Sorry about that," she said, crawling back onto the bed, her body pressing against mine. "Liam just needed some advice about school. You know how he is." Her hand slid over my chest, her lips trailing down my neck, as if she could erase my suspicions with touch alone. But something was different now. Her body was warm, inviting, but my mind was miles away. The image of her whispering into that phone, the desperation in her voice, kept replaying in my head. I forced myself to play along, running my fingers through her hair, gripping her waist as I rolled her onto her back. Her breath hitched as I pressed my lips against her collarbone, then lower, tasting her skin, feeling her shiver beneath me. "You're distracted," she whispered, her fingers tightening in my hair. I smirked against her skin. "Am I?" I dipped lower, eliciting a gasp from her. But even as I took her apart beneath me, my thoughts remained elsewhere. What was Evelyn hiding? And why did I have a terrible feeling that I was about to find out? The next morning, Evelyn was already awake when I opened my eyes. She stood by the window, her silk robe wrapped loosely around her body, staring out at the rain-soaked streets below. She looked lost in thought, just for a second, so brief that I might have missed it if I hadn't been paying attention. But I was. She turned to me with an easy smile. "Yeah, like I said, he just needed some advice." I sat up fully, my eyes locked onto hers. "Eve, don't lie to me." Her smile faltered. "No, what can he tell me?" My voice was calm, but firm. "What are you keeping from me?" Evelyn exhaled slowly, crossing her arms over her chest. For the first time in years, she looked uncertain, vulnerable. "It's complicated," she murmured. I stood, closing the distance between us in 2 steps. "Then explain it to me." She bit her lip, hesitating, and for a brief second, I thought she might actually tell me the truth. But then, she shook her head. "Just trust me," she whispered, reaching up to cup my face, her touch soft, pleading. "Please. Trust." That word felt like a fucking joke now. But I didn't push. Not yet. Instead, I leaned down, brushing my lips against hers, feeling her melt against me like she always did. If she thought she could distract me with sex, she was wrong. This time, I wasn't going to let it go. That night, after Evelyn had fallen asleep, I made my way down the hall to Liam's room. I knocked twice before opening the door. Liam was sitting at his desk, his laptop open, but the moment he saw me, he stiffened. "Dad!" His voice was wary, guarded. I stepped inside, closing the door behind me. "We need to talk." Liam sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "Look, if this is about last night." "It is." He froze. I crossed my arms. "I heard you on the phone with Evelyn. I know something's going on, and I want the truth." Liam's jaw clenched. "It's not that simple." "Then make it simple." For a long moment, he just stared at me. And then, finally, he exhaled sharply, dragging a hand through his hair. "You really don't know, do you?" He muttered, half to himself. I felt my pulse quicken. "Know what?" Liam let out a bitter laugh, shaking his head. "Fuck," he muttered. "I wasn't supposed to tell you." "Not yet." I took a step closer, my patience wearing thin. "Tell me what, Liam?" He looked up at me, and for the first time, I saw something in his eyes that made my stomach drop. "Pity. It's about Mom," he said quietly. "About who she really is." My blood ran cold. Evelyn, the woman I had spent the last 10 years of my life with. The woman I had married, loved, worshipped. Who the hell was she? And what the fuck had I just uncovered? I didn't know how long I had been standing there, staring at Liam as if waiting for him to take back what he had just said. But he didn't. He remained silent, his gaze filled with hesitation and a pain I couldn't quite name. Evelyn is not who you think she is. That sentence echoed in my mind, sinking into every dark corner of my consciousness, dragging along the doubts I had tried so hard to suppress. I shook my head, trying to steady myself. What the hell are you talking about? Liam let out a hollow chuckle, but there was no humor in his eyes. Do you really think Mom married you for love? He shook his head. No. From the very beginning, it was all a plan. My hands clenched into fists, heat rising to my face. Stop talking nonsense. Why don't you ask yourself why she never talks about her past? About where she came from? Liam continued, his voice growing colder. Haven't you ever wondered why she avoids any mention of her family? I swallowed hard. Of course, I had noticed Evelyn had always been secretive about her past. Whenever I asked about her childhood, she would brush it off with vague responses, changing the subject so smoothly that I would forget I had even asked. I never pushed her. I thought everyone had their own reasons for keeping certain things buried. But now, with Liam standing before me, looking so sure of himself, a terrible unease settled in my gut. You're lying, I muttered, though I wasn't sure who I was trying to convince, him or myself. Liam tilted his head, watching me carefully. Then, after a pause, he said, Do you remember my uncle? My breath hitched. What? My real father. Your brother. My body went rigid, my mind racing as the implications of his words crashed into me. No, I whispered. That's not possible. But Liam's expression remained unwavering. She never told you, did she? He asked, his voice quiet, almost sympathetic. I know the truth now, and I think it's time you do too. I felt like the ground beneath me had cracked open. Evelyn had been with my brother? No, it didn't make sense. He had died young, before he could ever settle down. I had mourned him, grieved for him. He never spoke of a woman, never mentioned a love affair. And yet, as I stared at Liam, I could no longer deny it, the resemblance. The sharp jawline, the intense gaze, the subtle mannerisms. How had I never noticed before? I staggered backward, shaking my head in disbelief. Where's your mother? I finally asked, my voice hoarse. Liam exhaled, running a hand through his hair. She's with Hannah. My stomach twisted. Hannah, Evelyn's younger sister, the one who had been living under my roof all these years. I turned and stormed down the hall, my pulse hammering in my ears. When I reached the door to the master bedroom, I didn't hesitate. I shoved it open with enough force to send it slamming against the wall. And there they were, Evelyn and Hannah. Evelyn was sitting on the edge of the bed, her robe loosely draped over her shoulders, the silk fabric slipping down to reveal the smooth curve of her back. Hannah stood beside her, fingers ghosting over Evelyn's skin, her expression both tender and possessive. The way they looked at each other sent a sickening realization crashing over me. This wasn't just sisterly affection, the intimacy, the unspoken connection. I had been blind. Evelyn's eyes widened when she saw me, but she didn't pull away from Hannah. Instead, she straightened, her expression shifting into something unreadable. Oliver, she said softly. My throat tightened. What the fuck is this? Hannah's lips curled into a smirk. I told you he'd find out eventually. Evelyn shot her a warning glance, then turned back to me, standing slowly. I was going to tell you, she murmured. I let out a sharp, bitter laugh. Oh, were you? Before or after I spent my entire life being a fool? Hannah chuckled, brushing her fingers along Evelyn's shoulder before stepping away, as if to give us space. He looks pissed, she mused. Evelyn exhaled, stepping toward me, but I held up a hand to stop her. My heart was pounding so violently I could hear it in my ears. Tell me the truth. Now. Evelyn hesitated, but then she nodded. Fine. She glanced at Hannah briefly before turning back to me. You deserve that much. I clenched my jaw, waiting. I loved your brother, she said at last, her voice barely above a whisper. Before all of this, he was my world. A cold sensation settled in my chest. But when he died, She paused, closing her eyes for a moment. I was lost. And then I found you. I stared at her, my breath coming in shallow gasps. Was anything real? I asked. Or was I just convenient? Evelyn's gaze softened. It was real, Oliver. But it was also complicated. I let out a hollow laugh, running a hand through my hair. Complicated? I repeated. That's what we're calling this. Hannah sighed, crossing her arms. You always were naive, she said. Always so eager to believe the best in people. That's why it was so easy for her. Evelyn shot her a glare. Hannah stopped, but Hannah only smirked. Why? He should know, shouldn't he? She turned to me. You think she was ever yours alone? The implication hit me like a truck. My hands curled into fists. Evelyn stiffened. Don't do this, she warned. Hannah just laughed. Oh, come on. What's one more secret after everything else? I swallowed hard, my stomach churning. How long? I demanded. How long has this been going on? Evelyn looked away. My blood ran cold. Holy shit. I staggered back. Hannah tilted her head. Surprised? She asked, her tone mocking. You shouldn't be. Evelyn's always been good at keeping secrets. I stared at my wife. No, the woman I thought I knew. Everything was unraveling, crumbling into a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. And the worst part? I had no idea what was real anymore. I couldn't breathe. The walls of the room seemed to close in around me as the weight of Evelyn's betrayal settled deep into my bones. Every look, every touch, every whispered, I love you. Had it all been a lie? Evelyn took a hesitant step forward, her robe still loosely hanging around her. Oliver, she said softly, like she thought she could still reach me. I can explain. I laughed, but it was bitter and hollow. Explain? My voice cracked with anger. Explain how you've been sleeping with your own sister under my roof? Or explain how you married me while carrying my dead brother's child? Which part, Evelyn? Her face twisted with pain, but I didn't care anymore. I had been made a fool of for too long. Hannah sighed dramatically and walked around us, completely unfazed by the tension in the room. You're taking this so personally, she murmured, tracing her fingers along the edge of the dresser. It's almost sweet. I turned my glare to her. You? I spat. How long has this been going on? She smirked. Oh, Oliver. Her eyes gleamed with amusement. Would it make you feel better if I said only a few months? A year? She stepped closer, lowering her voice. Or would it break you more to know it started before you even put a ring on her finger? My stomach churned while rising in my throat. You're lying, I muttered, but even as I said it, I knew she wasn't. Evelyn's silence confirmed it. You're disgusting, I snarled, my body trembling with rage. Both of you. Hannah only chuckled, but Evelyn's eyes glistened with unshed tears. I never wanted you to find out this way, she whispered. I shook my head, disgusted. And how exactly did you want me to find out? Silence. I scoffed, stepping back as if I could physically distance myself from this nightmare. You let me believe we had a real marriage, I accused. You let me think I had a family. Evelyn flinched, and for a moment, I thought she might actually cry. But I wasn't about to let myself be manipulated by those tears. Not again. A slow clap broke the tension. Liam. I turned sharply, finding my son leaning against the doorframe, arms crossed. Or rather, Evelyn's son. Not mine. He was smirking, but there was no amusement in his eyes, only cold satisfaction. Well, he drawled. That was even more entertaining than I imagined. I stared at him, my pulse hammering in my ears. You knew. He tilted his head. Of course I knew. My blood turned to ice. Liam pushed off the doorframe and walked into the room, his movements slow, deliberate. You see, Dad, oh wait, he chuckled darkly. I suppose I should stop calling you that now, shouldn't I? I clenched my jaw. Hannah smiled at him. I told you he'd find out soon. Liam nodded. You were right. But honestly, I expected more of a fight. He turned to Evelyn. Mom, you're losing your touch. Evelyn's face paled. Liam, don't. He cut her off sharply, his voice turning cold. You lost the right to lecture me a long time ago. My fists tightened at my sides. What the hell is going on? Liam smirked. Oh, Oliver. You've been so blind for so long. But it's okay. Let me make it simple for you. He stepped closer, lowering his voice to a near whisper. Everything, every single moment of your life with her was a lie. You were nothing more than a replacement. A convenient, pathetic replacement. I exhaled shakily, my mind spinning. Liam's smirk widened. And, do you want to know the best part? I didn't answer. I couldn't. He leaned in, his lips barely moving as he whispered, I fucked Hannah. A sharp, ringing silence filled the room. Evelyn gasped. Liam, don't act surprised, he interrupted. You always knew I was different. Didn't you, Mom? I couldn't think. I couldn't breathe. You're lying, I whispered, though I knew deep down that he wasn't. Hannah only smiled, her eyes dark with amusement. Sweet, sweet Liam, she murmured, reaching out to touch his face. He wanted to hurt you, Oliver, just like you hurt him. My knees nearly gave out. You, my voice cracked. Liam shrugged. I told you, Dad, sorry. Oliver, I know everything now. I know what you did. I know how you replaced my father, pretended to be the perfect husband, the perfect father. But you weren't. You never were. I shook my head, trying to piece everything together, trying to make sense of it all. So what? I rasped. This was your revenge? Liam's eyes gleamed. Something like that. I looked at Evelyn, searching for any sign that this was all just some twisted nightmare I would wake up from. But she wouldn't meet my gaze. And that was answer enough. I turned and stormed toward the door. Needing to get out? Needing air? Where are you going? Hannah called after me. The show isn't over yet. I didn't answer. I couldn't stay in that house another second. But as I reached the door, Liam's voice stopped me. Oh, and Oliver? I hesitated, my hand on the handle. Liam smirked. You might want to get tested. My breath caught in my throat. I turned slowly, dread coiling in my stomach. What? Hannah laughed. Oops. Did we forget to mention that part? Liam's smile widened. You're not as clean as you think you are. And just like that, the last thread of my sanity snapped. The world around me blurred into nothingness. The walls of the house that once felt like my sanctuary now suffocated me. Every word, every confession, every twisted revelation echoed in my mind, leaving behind a trail of destruction I couldn't escape. Liam smirked at me, the satisfaction in his eyes burning through my skin like acid. Hannah stood beside him, her arms crossed, completely at ease in the chaos she had helped create. Evelyn, my wife, no, my betrayer, stood frozen, her face pale, her lips trembling. You might want to get tested, Liam had said. The words replayed over and over in my head. My stomach clenched. You're lying. I forced out, but my voice lacked conviction. Liam tilted his head. Am I? Hannah chuckled. Sweetheart, we all have our little secrets. But some secrets, they come with consequences. I turned sharply to Evelyn, my chest heaving. Is this true? My voice was sharp, desperate. She shook her head violently. No, isn't. You don't get to swear anything to me anymore. I roared, stepping toward her. I trusted you. I built a life with you. And this whole time, you were fucking your sister? You were raising my brother's child under my roof. Evelyn flinched. I never meant. You never meant for me to find out. I spat. Silence. Her eyes flickered with something. Guilt? Fear? Or just exhaustion from keeping up the act for so long. Liam exhaled, rolling his eyes. God, this is getting boring. Are you going to hit someone? Oliver? Scream some more? Or are you finally going to realize you were never in control of this game? My hands curled into fists. I wanted to hit him. I wanted to knock that smug smirk off his face, to make him feel even an ounce of the pain he had inflicted on me. But then I looked at him, really looked at him. My brother's son, not mine. Never mind. Everything clicked into place. The puzzle I had been too blind to see finally assembling before me. Liam had always been distant, cold. He never saw me as his father, because he had always known the truth. He had always known I was a fraud. And Evelyn, she had let it happen. I laughed. The sound was hollow, broken. So this was the plan all along? I gestured between them. Ruin me? Humiliate me? Liam shrugged. You did that to yourself. Hannah's lips curled into a wicked smile. But we just helped it along. I turned back to Evelyn, the last shred of hope in me dying. Did you ever love me? Tears welled in her eyes. Oliver, did you? I growled. Silence. That was my answer. I turned away, my heart hammering, my mind racing. I needed to get out. I needed to breathe. But just as I reached the door, Liam's voice stopped me again. One more thing, he said lazily. Before you go running off like a coward. I clenched my jaw. What? Liam smirked. You should check the cameras in your office. My blood ran cold. Slowly, I turned to face him. What the hell are you talking about? Hannah laughed. Oh, Ollie, did you really think you were the only one playing games? I didn't hesitate. I stormed past them, my body moving on instinct. I knew exactly what they were talking about. My office, the security system I had installed, the footage I never checked because I never had a reason to. Until now, I ran down the stairs, my pulse racing. My hands shook as I logged into the system, pulling up the most recent footage. The screen flickered, and then I stopped breathing. The video played out before me like a scene from some twisted nightmare. Evelyn, Hannah, Liam, together. My stomach twisted violently. My vision blurred with rage, disgust, betrayal so deep it burned through my veins. The sounds, the movements, the pleasure on their faces. I slammed the laptop shut, my chest heaving. This wasn't real. This couldn't be real. But it was. I stumbled back, the room spinning around me. My entire life, every moment, every memory, had been a lie. A carefully orchestrated illusion designed to break me, to turn me into a fool. And they had succeeded. Footsteps. I turned sharply. Liam stood in the doorway, arms crossed, his expression unreadable. Do you get it now? He asked softly. My hands trembled. Why? My voice cracked. He exhaled slowly, stepping closer. Because you took everything from me. My brows furrowed. I never. You took my father, Liam snapped. You took my mother. You took the life I was supposed to have. And for what? To play house? To pretend you could be him? I shook my head. That's not. You're a fucking joke, Oliver, Liam sneered. And I made sure you knew it. Something inside me snapped. I lunged at him, grabbing his collar, slamming him against the wall. Say that again. I seethed, my grip tightening. Liam only smiled. Go ahead, he whispered. Hit me. Show me who you really are. My fist clenched. I wanted to. God, I wanted to. But then I saw it. The satisfaction in his eyes. This was what he wanted. He wanted me to lose control. He wanted me to break. I let go. Liam stumbled forward, caught off guard. What? No fight left. He taunted. I straightened, my voice steady. No, I won't give you that satisfaction. His smirk faltered. I took a step back, looking at him, really looking at him. He was broken, just like me. Whatever revenge you wanted, I said quietly, you got it. Congratulations. Liam's jaw tightened. I turned to leave, and this time I didn't stop. I walked out of that house and never looked back. The world outside was cold, but it was real, and for the first time in years I could finally breathe.